to the first episode of Dojo Live this week, July 6th, 2022. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be hosting today from Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. Joining me is co-host David Corolla.
Hi, everybody.
Also in Hermosillo, so we're a little hot here. And the guest today, the star of today's show is Gagan Gulati. He is the Chief Product Officer at Behavox, joining us from Seattle. So love it. I love Seattle. Thank you for joining us today, Gagan.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's going to be a fun talk today as we talk about AI, compliance, security, and more. But before we do that, we'd love to get to know you a bit better. Can you please share with us who Gagan is, what makes you tick, what are you all about, and what led up to your time with Behavox?
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, thanks, Kim. Thanks, David, for hosting me. Great to be here. So as you said, my name is Gagan, and I have been the Chief Product Officer at Behavox for almost 2 years now. And I've been helping the company with its product vision, the strategy, the roadmap across all our product lines. And so it's been a great, I would say, adventurous the last 2 years. Because this literally has been my first startup after a long career at Microsoft.
Wow,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Oh yeah, thank you. It's been so I was at Microsoft for almost like 16 years. When I was leaving, I was a partner and a director of product management for almost all the primary data protection and governance products. So I did that for a dozen years, based here in Seattle. Ran very successful products like Azure Information Protection, Microsoft Information Protection. And before that, I was an engineering manager and engineer. I spent 6 years in Windows, the famous or infamous, depending on how you see it. So I spent almost 6 years. I worked on Windows Vista, Windows 7, and then some of Windows 8. And then I realized that maybe I need to try something else, and I became a product manager in Azure. So that was my journey across at Microsoft. I've been in Seattle for the last 14 years out of 16 when I was at Microsoft, and last 2 years as well. So it's been a long time. I am also a pretty active angel investor. I support a bunch of startups as their advisor. And now at this stage, I just continue to try to give back to the community, to the product technology community or otherwise, by mentoring individuals, mentoring founders who are starting new companies, are looking for direction on what shape their product should take. And overall, it's just been a great ride, and I'm just happy to be here. So that's a little bit about me.
Very cool. Later on, I'm really interested in knowing what happened, what made that shift exactly, that I'm ready to leave Microsoft and do the startup world.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about Behavox. What is it that you do? What is the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, so Behavox, Behavox is an insights company, foremost. It's a funny way to say it, but it's an insights company. We have a suite of security products that help our customers in the compliance, security, and HR space. And the goal primarily is to allow the compliance, the security, the HR operators and operations teams to protect their organization and their workforce against bad actors. So it's a pretty interesting space to be in. What we do is we basically help the enterprises identify the illegal, immoral, or malicious behaviors that are happening in their workspace, and we primarily do that through communication methods, communication channels like email, chat, Teams, Slack, Bloomberg, Gold Style, if you go. So, and the idea is that we primarily catch these bad actors, and we want to be, and we are in some ways the world's best at it when through our proprietary AI technology that we've built over the last few years.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think for me, most of the time when I think about security and compliance, I'm thinking in terms of external threats, right? Not internal ones. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation today. So Today's topic, as chosen by you, Gagan, is what, David?
Yes, you chose the topic of AI in compliance and security. how the latest AI and machine learning technologies are allowing customers to take a quantum leap in protecting their organizations. So, would you mind telling us why did you choose this topic, and how can you explain its relevance to the times we're living in?
Yeah, yes. Um, so the two separate ways to think about it, right? One is data has always been the oil, the new oil of the digital world for the last 10, 20 years, right? I guess 10 years ago we used to say data is the new oil, but a decade has passed, so it has been the new oil. So that's the one part, very, very clearly, which is most companies focus on generating insights from the data. And the insights could be in many forms. Insights could be in how do I improve my revenue? How do I protect my organization? How do I drive compliance? How do I drive security? Right. So that's one angle. And the data we're talking about here, it could be all kinds. Documents you write, documents I write, emails, chat we do with each other in the company. So that's one. The second thing is that there has always been a big desire to utilize that data to generate those insights. And while there has been this desire, the technology hadn't caught up over the last decade, right? So the word, even when the technologists, the security professionals, the compliance professionals, they wanted to go ahead and utilize the data to the best of their ability to protect their organization. The problem typically has been that the word was still has even today has been living in the old pattern matching form. So, for example, if you and I are talking or we are discussing something over the email, I look for specific things. I look for specific keywords, right? That's the word most organizations live in today. I look for keywords like, hey, we have a project X or project Y. If you find anything with respect to project X or project Y, then inform me and I'll do something about it because it was supposed to be this the keyword or the banned word in the organization. So I'm just kind of giving you an example. Or I look for patterns where somebody is going out of compliance, or somebody is violating certain principles in a company, and the way to you will work on them is also through the same mechanisms of pattern matching. Has this person said this and then said this and then said that? But if I were to say, thank you, David, I could say, thank David, thanks, David, thank you, David, thank you together, David, thank you with the space, David. I could say, thanks, Dave. Like there are so many ways I could say thanks to you in a single word, in a single sentence, that it's almost impossible for an organization to go figure out, did I say thank you to you? And I'm taking a very positive example of something where you want to find an insight on that. So a great example, if we were I'll talk about compliance in a minute and why compliance and security it makes sense. But for the audience who may not be that familiar with security and compliance, the example is if I were to tell every salesperson in the organization, please say thanks to your customer at the end of the call. How many ways can you say thanks? And it's almost impossible for the organization to write down all the patterns that will allow you to say thank you. So it's a very hard problem. You have the data, but you don't have the technology that can actually go get you that. And
Yeah.
the
And not only that, like I can say thank you or thank you.
yeah,
Right. And
exactly,
so it's not just the written, but like what's the meaning behind it? Is there
exactly.
sarcasm? Is there frustration?
Yeah, and then you add the concept of languages in there. Like thank you in English. The person on the other hand may not be speaking English, so you may decide to say it in I guess you're in Mexico, so Spanish. You may decide to say it in some other language, right? And then what happens? Your patterns suddenly get double, triple, four times. So languages play an important part. So I'm just taking a very naive example to say, even when the organizations wanted to generate simple insights using the data, it's has been very hard to do so. Now, when you come to um, security and compliance world, and Behavox has primarily been over the last many years has focused on compliance and now security and HR related work. It's basically the same similar problem. There are many compliance products available today in the market that deal with things like financial crime, that deal with market abuse. If you're talking financial organizations specifically, um, and then it becomes the same problem. How do you utilize the old technologies against the data to find out if somebody is abusing the market, or somebody is going and doing financial crimes? So you want to know that, right? Because you want to protect your company. And it could be simple things like it could be general misconduct behaviors that may be happening in your organization. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, right? But compliance teams are responsible to take care of their organization. They're responsible to be to protect their their users. They're responsible for protecting their company. But the technology hadn't caught up, right, over the last many years, and that's basically the big change or the big leap that Behavox has brought in over the last many years. Um, is that the company focus primarily on artificial intelligence and machine learning, not on pattern matching, not on figuring out the keywords, but primarily on. I mean, we do support them, of course, we need to, right? But we are focused on the future of AI and machine learning. And some of the technologies we used hadn't even been invented till like late 2020. Some of the technologies we
Wow.
use from open source are the ones that, for example, Google uses in their search engine today. So it's extremely cutting edge, and so we're proud of the kind of work that we have done to bring machine learning and AI to this world where you can use this to run against all your data to really go up and provide those actionable alerts, uh, right? So in more scientific terms, in more terms that some people understand, it's called the ratio of true positives to false positives. You want to generate a lot more true positives. um, you want to be wasting the minimal amount of time um, chasing false positives,
Of course, of
right?
course.
And
Hmm.
and some of the work that we have done over the last 2 years, and if somebody wants to go to our website to check, we basically, some of our studies on based on what we have been able to do compared to our competitors is that we are almost like 3,000. Like, it's such a quantum leap. We are almost 3,000 times better in terms of generating true positives and less
Wow.
false positives for some of our customers.
And
Wow.
So yeah,
it
so
also
it's
feels even more particularly relevant to our times, because you mentioned being cutting edge, but now with the pandemic and the way that we are being forced to be even more diverse and working from home, I feel that that changes up those patterns that you were mentioning. I feel that the situations we were in 3 years ago, that we need to analyze security wise, are a lot different now than they were.
yeah. And look, I mean, the fact is, we live in a digital headquarters today, right? Which wasn't the case even like 5-7 years ago. So whether you are in person, you are remote, you are in hybrid form, like working some days at work, you're still living in digital headquarters, right? You'll much rather. So that's the reality, which means everything happens on these communication channels, right? Like we are talking, and
Hmm.
an example of this is, can I capture the voice from this conversation and use it to run certain algorithms to actually analyze stuff. uh, so that's the world we live in, right? Where everything is being recorded one way or the other, and that allows you this amazing opportunity to get a full 360-degree view of the overall the health of the organization, which just wasn't very possible till a few years ago.
Right. So I'd like to get, if you could, just offer maybe some use cases or examples of Behavix in action to sort of wrap our heads around this. So to make sure I'm following you so far, this is really about me as an organization being able to make sure that my people are compliant and secure. So it's internal to me, not protecting my product or something for my users.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's the primarily. I mean, we do capture. We have use cases which I'll not focus on today for the shortage of time, of course. Is where we capture internal, external, conversations, external, internal conversations, and their cases. You can use cases that you can clearly build on top of. How are you conversing, or how are you reacting to external conversations, or reacting with external, parties. But let me give you a couple of examples or use cases of how the AI that Behavox has built is extremely useful in a couple of cases. So I'll take a case for compliance, and then I'll take a case for security. Maybe that
Cool.
will help.
Yes, please.
So the compliance case is a typical example of this would be insider dealing. Now, if you understand finance a little bit, you'll understand that insider dealing is a pretty big deal. And SEC, and there are rules and that govern, and regulations that govern um, what insider dealing means. So at Behavox, what we have done is we have a team of subject matter experts who are pros, who have been in the industry for very long, and who are all ex compliance officers. So they literally come in and they basically have gone through all the regulations across the globe, right? And they have written them down, and they've written them down in a form that our data science team can understand and can start building machine learning models that can tell us very clearly whether a conversation that's going on between two employees or three or four, is it insider dealing or not, right? So then we basically, utilizing that specification that we have built, we train our models so that it can look for these patterns, look for the conversations, and look for look for the patterns which will basically come and tell you whether this is insider dealing or not. And funny enough, the machine learning world that we live in is becoming more and more precise by the day. So you can feed, it's like a child, like it's basically you're growing, you have a child and you're teaching child that this is machine learning and this is insider dealing and this is not. And the more good examples you tell, so you basically feed this model good examples and bad examples of what insider dealing means. You don't have to teach them everything. Like for a child, once you for children, right? And you have children, right? So Kim, right? So for your girls, for example, you once you start telling them what's right and what's wrong, you don't need to feed them every example. You need to feed them enough examples such that they can precisely say, "Mom, this is good. I understand," or "This behavior is bad. I understand." Right? And that's literally how you basically train your machine learning models. So our experts, we have experts in-house, we have experts communities who basically come and train these models to teach the models what a good, what is potentially an insider dealing activity behavior and what's not. And so it's not based on keywords, it's not based on match the patterns of what's saying, who's saying to what. It's basically literally words and phrases that are being said that will basically determine what's insider dealing activity versus what's not. So that's an example of what you can do in the compliance world, right? In the security world, a similar use case would be around insider crime. It's one of our flagship products that we have, and the concept there is that if an employee, so insider crime, the world we live in, essentially, there's a lot of insider risk that actually exists today. You hear about this all the time in news that someone went and leaked millions of records because they were disgruntled with somebody got demoted, somebody was not happy with their manager. So, there were employees who were who had been left out at work, right? So you hear about these cases all the time, and you hear about the fact that these employees do something wrong. And a wrong could be, the spectrum of what is wrong is actually pretty large. It could be, the implications could be from as simple as, well, simple in the funny word, but like data leakage, like you lose data, or to actually espionage. You actually form alliance with the wrong people to do harm to the company. The worst cases are when you do harm to the other employees. So it's happened. There are true cases of employees going in and harming other people because they became malicious. Essentially, they just didn't want to do the. They were not good employees anymore of the company. But it's very hard for the organization to actually figure out who are these employees. Sometimes the organization will even catch the employees while they're doing something wrong. So an example would be a simple case study that's actually a true case study is, you have an employee, and I'm making a case because you're in Mexico, so I'll take that example. The employee was based out of the United States, moved to Mexico, went to Mexico for a couple of weeks, and they basically started downloading a large amount of data. So the security team caught it, called the employee and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are they downloading so much data?" And the employee will say, "Oh, no big deal. I was downloading it because my internet connection may not be that good. So I'm downloading it so I can read all of this confidential data while I'm here." And the security operations guy said, "Okay, I'll close the case, put the phone down." But they do not know the mindset of the employee. They have no idea whether the employee is doing this in good faith or not in good faith. Is the employee doing it because he actually wants to do ransom, he wants to call for ransom because he has all the confidential data or not, right? So you don't know the mindset of your employees, whether this person is a malicious insider risk or not. And how do you determine that? Well, you can now using AI, using machine learning, you can actually determine that, because you can look at the patterns that the employee has shown over the last 6 months or 10 months.
Wow.
Is the person under financial distress? Is the person a disgruntled employee? Was the person demoted? Was the person a loner at work? Was the person not stable mentally? Were there incidents in the past? So you put it all together, and when the security operations person is interviewing that employee who just went to Mexico, they will know what the mindset of this person is. So they can actually make a better judgment, and not just close the case based on what the person told you.
That's
Understood.
Right. So that's a great example of what our insider crime product or module does, essentially, in terms of going inside the mindset of the employee and coming up with this high risk set of individuals who should be better monitored, better taken care
Right.
of, just in case they do something wrong.
I have so many questions. I think starting with, I got a couple. One, like, what types of communication methods is Behavox monitoring, let's say, in order to collect this information? Are we talking about, internal messaging systems like Slack or Skype, emails, of course, you've mentioned, even
All of
is like my personal, like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, are those things compiled? And then how does this
Yeah.
turn and my question here is, what does this look like for company culture and privacy for me as an employee? How is that protected and trust not broken?
Yes, that's a great question. So first is, we have more than 150 different sources where we can capture data from, and that includes Twitter, that includes
150, 150?
150. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So the thing is, most companies that we have worked with, some of our biggest customers, have been in the works for forever. Like they're 50-year-old, 100-year-old companies, which means they have a lot of the communication endpoints that we may not use on a daily basis in the new world, but they just exist. For example, there's still Skype's well used. So is Yahoo Messenger I'm sure in some place somewhere. And there are many proprietary and niche communication methods that you and I may not use, but some of these organizations use. So the list is very long, and we keep adding to that list. When you talk about LinkedIn, Twitter, we're primarily focused on the official accounts, not the personal accounts, to be clear. Right, so that's the key. Which means that if you have a LinkedIn account that your organization is using, and they're like 10 marketing executives who are focused on LinkedIn, so that's what we focus on, not the individual personal LinkedIn accounts. So as an example, so we capture the widest variety of sources of data that the customer has asked us to utilize. Right, it's their prerogative, not ours. To be clear, it's an enterprise, so they basically say ingest with work with this data, work with this data. So typical ones like Gmail, Office 65, on-prem email, Teams, Slack, Zoom, um, Bloomberg is well used, Custodia. So there are dozens of them. Not only that, but voice data as well. So whether it's Teams, Zoom, so we capture voice. We have an entire dedicated voice lab that basically ingests that data, the voice data. We do what is typically used as known as transcription in an easy way, automated transcription, or automated speech recognition. So we can transcribe that data into text form, and so that we can run our models against that. So that's one part, the first part of your question. So it could be the widest variety, and we capture all of that. The second part is the trust and the privacy part of the house. So there's definitely the angle. A lot of our customers today are financial institutions who, by law, by regulation, have been asked to do the monitoring. So that's part one, right? So a lot of the cases that's the case. It just happens, and employees know this. The truth of the matter is that,
which sounds probably, honestly, as silly as that sounds, you actually taught me something today. Coming from my current company, which is, very freedom-based, freedom at work, and, self-managed, I was like, what? Like thinking like this would never fly with
Well,
us.
actually,
But it makes perfect sense. And I think for me, within customer bases and verticals where it is in fact required by law, I'm like, okay, this makes so
yeah,
much more sense
But-
now.
but at the yes, that's true. At the same time, we do have customers who are not required by law or regulation, but they are the ones who want to protect their employees. See, the key is, are you in the business of protecting your employees or not? Like if you're an HR professional, you are a
Right.
compliance professional, you are a security professional. We have a module, a product which we call as culture and conduct, that actually focuses on ensuring that the employees are not being harassed, ensuring that the employees are they are not victims of
Beautiful.
aggressors, right? So we have an entire suite of, we call them risk indicators, that we use to help the organizations protect their most vulnerable employees.
I
And
love
these
it.
risk,
It
right?
makes me think sometimes we can think of like the 10 Commandments, let's say, like, oh God, he's such a stick in the mud or whatever. I can't do anything fun. But the truth is, if you were to follow the 10 Commandments, you'd probably live a pretty decent life by, keeping yourself out of trouble. So I think that's kind of this flip of it can be like, big brother. But the truth is it's meant for
Right.
everyone's good.
Yeah,
Yes.
we all understand, and we have seen enough articles on the web, day in and day out, about harassment based on age, race, gender, sexual harassments, religion-based harassments, and and what happens in a lot of these cases is that the employee has to come to their HR, to their risk team, and say, "I was the victim of such a harassment or such a discrimination." And then it's a true fact, because we have interviewed enough, we have worked with enough customers. I have been in other organizations, so I can tell you that the HR team and the risk team, they have very little data. They have to basically start the entire process from the time that employee actually files a complaint. And the problem is that only, and the Gartner actually has a study which says only like 5% of the employees ever go and file a complaint. Right? There was an article yesterday about the Korean work culture, which basically said that one in five employees across South Korea has been harassed at some point in time by their manager. Harassment could be in any form, right? But they
Yeah.
have been harassed by, discriminated by, and they have no data, and the HR really can't do much because the employees don't come forward because they fear repercussions.
Uh-huh.
So our culture and conduct module is basically is formed so that it allows the organization to be able to proactively protect their employees from being harassed, from being discriminated. And how do you do that? Well, it's all anonymous data, end of the day, right? The data is anonymous. So what we do is we basically, because our machine learning and our models and our AI runs, it basically captures, and again, just like insider dealing that I talked about earlier, there's a model that can go detect, let's assume, religious harassment or sexual discrimination, right? And there are we have again experts who have helped us build these models. And what you can do is then you can run this model against vast swath of anonymized data, and you can come back with egregious examples where this may have happened. Now, 90% of the times the employees are all good, like you're saying, Kim. You know, employee-led, freedom-friendly. But then there is a 10%, and then there is a 5%, 2%. I don't believe any organization in this world is all full of saints. That's a fallacy, right? So anyway, so that's basically the thought process where you can basically say my company, my culture is all great, but we all know that there will always be, and that's why the cases come out, and most of them don't
Yeah.
come out. And so our models allow these companies to protect their most vulnerable employees, minorities, against such harassment and discrimination, and that's where the companies find value. So we
Thank
build
you.
trust.
Thank you for
You know,
clarifying that.
Awesome.
Clarifying.
yeah, and so the last thing I would say is we build trust, and it's all the algorithms that we run are run in a very anonymous way, And the reports that we generate, which provide you a sentence, will never tell you who said this to who till you find it egregious enough that you'll involve the right HR and the legal and compliance people, and that you can form a committee to basically say that I cannot tolerate in my company. We should go investigate, and then you go investigate, right? So, and
Mhm.
it's a once you reach that maturity level, it becomes a very easy conversation to have with the with the right audience.
Awesome. And
Right.
one of the things that I love to hear here is that as soon as we had a question about how we can make your product, be widely accepted by the employees and everything, you had a very clear answer about the product being able to address these cultural issues that can sometimes arise in a company. So I'd love to know, how does this translate to the way that you handle your company culture? What does Behavox believe, and how do they put this into practice?
Yeah, no, I think definitely. So, I mean, you can imagine that all our products that we have built, we've deployed inside our own company, right?
Which
But that's
ironically is kind of rare at tech companies.
Yes.
yeah, right. But that's like the first thing you'll do is to make sure that our own organization is safe, is secure, the employees are being protected, right? So that's almost a given. Um, and then I think at Behavox, the key part is that we have a culture of innovation, a culture of leading with the whole idea of insights, um, and and that's why we end up hiring the best people who want to actually focus on building the right insights for our customers, and primarily focusing on what customers want. So to provide the best insights when it comes to culture, the conduct and culture part, or figuring out the insider crime angle, for example, you have to be able to um, have a culture inside the company that focuses on protecting its own company, that focuses on finding having the right mindset that you can go after, right? So that's pretty much what we do. This our culture is culture of innovation, always leading edge in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And it's a culture where we want to make sure that our own organization is well protected, our own organization is as much as we possibly can using machine learning and AI. So that's what we focus on. Of course, it's a very heavy product data science and tech led organization. Simply because of the cutting edge work that we do in the company. Um yeah, and it's global. So the good news is that the
Nice.
company is extremely global. We have employees all over the place. I think last year when we were representing around 70 odd countries, 70 odd languages. So it's a small 250 people company, but the amount of countries of native origin that we represented were mind-boggling. So
Wow.
and therefore the culture has to be where it's inclusive, to allow for everybody to bring in their own little touch to the
That's
organization.
beautiful. It's great. I'm curious at the potential to kind of reverse engineer this as well, and not just with the compliance breakers, but the compliance honorers, right? The people who are doing things really great. Is this
Yeah.
would be a way to be able to pinpoint those individuals? I think
Yes.
that could be exciting. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the very end of our show today. That half hour went very fast, Gagan. It was a pleasure to learn from you, to learn about Behavox. And thank you so much for spending your time with us.
No, absolutely. The pleasure was mine, and thank you for hosting me on the show. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
it's our pleasure. Please stick around for just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, I would like to introduce tomorrow's show. What do we have tomorrow? We're going to be talking about resilience and the path to achieving the dream with Daniel Duara, founder and CTO of Pebblebee. And he'll be talking about when the unexpected happens, how do you find the courage, strength, and drive to persevere? So don't miss it tomorrow, 12 o'clock Pacific, right here at Dojo Live. Thank you, David. Thank you, Gagan. And everyone else, thank you as well. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.